Welcome to Ring Talk, the weekly boxing show from Goodwin Boxing, where we've now given up on what episode number we're on, because I haven't got a clue. And also, I realised earlier today I've also been very lax at putting it on SoundCloud, so I'll get back to doing that as well. Let's get back in order. We'll get the house back in order, right? We'll do it
Exactly that.
Myself, Martin Theobald, and Steve Goodwin. How are you, Steve?
I'm all good, mate. I had a good weekend. Apart from Linus winning, Arsenal beating Tottenham for the third consecutive year. Great result, wasn't it, Martin? Great result. And exposed Tottenham for where they are. Pretty poor.
Third consecutive year at our place. Yeah. But we got the draw with you last year, which stopped you win the title. So happy days. There were enough indicators that I'm not Ange out. I've been sort of consuming quite a lot of Tottenham content over the last 24 hours, and the fan base is quite split. And
is it?
Yeah, whereas I think we're probably in a better position than Arteta was a year and a little bit into his tenure at Arsenal. Arsenal fans sort of wanted him out at the time, or not all, but there was a growing voice of wanting him out. I'm okay with it. There were enough sort of indicators. If Solanke could get a shot off, if Son could run past the defender, if Brennan Johnson could retire, I think we'd be in a better place.
That's a fair shout.
Yeah. So no, it wasn't my best footballing Sunday.
And obviously we was at your call Saturday, which was great, but we got a break now till October the 12th. So everything's good. But
you'll be coming back strong on October the 12th.
Yeah, we're working hard. October the 12th is a great show, so we'll discuss that over the next couple of weeks.
We will. In the meantime, then, let's have a look. We've got our talking point that was sent in by John Bailey on the back of last week. It's quite interesting reading people's comments about Simon Jordan last week. And some value him, some don't value him. Some value him, but think that he needs to sort of understand the nuances of the sport a little bit better, which I think is probably the correct answer. I did hear a story once, not that long back, that he was looking at getting into boxing, Simon Jordan.
I heard that.
With Spencer Oliver and some others as well, but nothing ever seemed to come of it.
But as you know, these people that don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're doing. Just because you're on a talk show talking boxing, it doesn't mean you can run a business within boxing. Do you know what I mean? It takes a total... You've got to really know your stuff if you're to, or have a potload of money given to you to play with, one or the other. But if you don't know your stuff and you haven't got a potload of money to play with, you're going to fail like 90% of them do.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for the likes of Simon Jordan, and I'm not comparing myself, but me to sit and make opinions about things within boxing without having our hand in our back pockets, having to make a living out of it. So. But I still find him interesting. So whatever.
No, so do I.
Let's go on. Saturday night at York Hall. So we'll come to the main event last. You mentioned it briefly, Linus Udofia becoming a two-time English champion. We're also going to have a look ahead to what's going on down at Wembley Stadium this weekend. But first of all, we'll kick off with Ed Harradine against Harry Matthews. Debut for Ed.
That was a good fight, to be honest. It was... Ed's 36, and he's got an interesting backstory. I mean, his wife was with him. They've got two children. He's been together with his wife for 22 years since he was, and he's built up a really successful business. He's not short of money. He's made a really good living. They live in a nice house. They live everything they want. But he suddenly decided, I need to go back. I need to try and fight for a title. And his whole ambition is to come back and fight for a title, whether it be Southern Area or something. So he hadn't boxed for 9 years. He'd done some amateurs in his 20s and was previously a world taekwondo champion. So I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard he was okay from sparring stories. He warmed up for the first 2 rounds, and Harry's tough, but he really hurt Harry in the last. And I think if it was another minute in the round, he could have stopped him. It was actually a really good performance for a debut, in my opinion. Especially considering 9 years out of the ring. I thought he'd done really well. He should be proud of himself for that. And he's going to be out again in December.
Do you have doubts or a moral obligation to raise those doubts to somebody that comes to you at 35 and says, I want to make my boxing debut? Or is the age actually an irrelevance, and sort of as long as the board are comfortable with going through their processes and due diligence, then crack on?
Yeah, and I think if everybody deserves a chance. If I watched him yesterday and thought, oh my God, it's on Saturday, and I thought, oh my God, he's at danger. He's got a wife and 2 kids, and he shouldn't be doing this. I'd tell him and say to him, you need to stop doing it. But that wasn't the case. He was decent, really decent, and you can only imagine he improved from that. Remember Leon McKenzie? I think he fought for a title at the age of 39.
Yeah.
So it can be done, and he had no amateur experience. So it can be done, but we are realistic in timescales, expectations, and so we'll build him up. He's going to have to move quicker than others, and let's hope he gets the relevant number of fights in and gets his title opportunity.
And the problem is, even if, and I'm not saying this about Ed whatsoever, but even if it wasn't up to par and you sort of went, nah, it's not for you, mate, and released him, someone else would sign him anyway, as you know.
Yeah, but you don't always tell the truth.
Yeah. Whereas at least with yourself, it's safely done and managed and correctly done. But
exactly
moving
right.
on, another debutant, Shaun Simpson taking on Jordan Grannum.
So Shaun's in his early 30s. I think he's 33, maybe 34. He turned over once again late in life, but he boxed well against Jordan. He's been down sparring Brad and Linus, so he's had some really good preparation and ready for it. And he boxed a nice debut. It wasn't as sort of exciting as the Ed Harradine fight, because that was pretty much a war for a couple of rounds. But it was a good boxing performance. I think he shared a round with Jordan. Jordan took a round. But I thought he boxed really nicely, and once again he'll move on from that and be back out hopefully before the end of the year.
Louis Haynes in his third outing against Lee Hallett.
I thought he was really decent. He boxed Lee Hallett, and I watched him closely because I'd done a bit of commentary with Adam. I commentated on that one. Then we had some equipment issues for a change, which are going to be they will not be happening again. So yeah, I commentated on that with him, and he's got good foot movement. He stayed in the pocket a bit too long, but he's got good foot movement. I think he'll be really decent, and I think he's progressing nicely. He's quick, sharp. He'll be winning. He'll be winning titles, no doubt about that. So I'm very impressed with him.
And it's worth noting with a few of these, by the way, not that I'm sat with BoxRec in front of me as I talk to you, Steve, because I wouldn't be that unprofessional. But if I was sat with it, it'd be worth noting Louis Van Pooch refereeing.
First fight ever was the Lee Hallett. That was his first refereeing contest.
Brilliant.
And, I was really no, he done a great job. I mean, he enjoyed it, and he'd be a great addition to the referee ranks because he's been there, seen there, done it all around the country. He'd be a great referee. I think the board are lucky to have him as a ref. He's doing the trial job, but I think down the line he'll be a really great ref.
Yeah, it's great because you lose so many people out of the sport. The fact that somebody who's been such a great servant in Lewis, and he's able to continue that pathway through the sport and sort of give back as well, because his refereeing ability, I'm sure in time, will be amazing because he's been through it.
The only thing I said to him was a bit worried about him because I think there'll be more journeymen winning.
He's a sympathiser. Alfie Shrubb went to 2-0 against Dale Arrowsmith.
Yeah, now Alfie's he performed okay. What I would say was he didn't get off enough, and Dale got confidence and came onto him and pushed him back at times. So he was getting the position, but he just wasn't throwing enough and moving in enough. So I think he's going to learn from it. It's only his second fight, but there's a lot of improvements to come here. Chris Davis, a current pro in his corner. I'm sure Chris will be a great trainer, and they know what the problem was. But he won convincingly, but his output needs to improve. But I'm sure it will, because Chris will be a good trainer. He'll be able to identify that. But it was a solid performance, but he needs to step up.
Yeah. Dean Gardner, points win over Christian Lopez Flores.
He's managed and trained by Alec Wilkie, and they moved down now to super lightweight. He's going to be a handful for anybody. He's very, very, very aggressive, active on the front foot. he's going to give people in the super lightweight division a hell of a lot of problems because he's relentless. So unless you've got a high work rate, he's going to struggle. I know Alex looking for a title shot for him at some point, so I'm sure he'll be working on that. But very impressed with Dean as it happens. He handled Flores really well, and I was very impressed with him.
Jiyan Oguz against Luke Fash.
Well, Jiyan had a very poor performance last time. He lost to Kane Singh, came back this time, performed well and dropped Luke Fash en route to winning, I think, 60-53. He needed that. He just needed that comeback fight, and he'll now move on to November. But yeah, I mean, he's very talented, but when you have a setback, you need to put that right. He's got himself back in with a winning performance, and I'm sure he'll move on. You know, I had higher hopes for him before he got defeated, and just one day when it all went wrong doesn't mean you're a bad fighter overnight. And he put in a good performance on Saturday, but now he's got to move on, increase the opponent levels bit by bit, and start to move towards title shots at that weight.
Yeah, and dropping Luke Fash, that's not something many people do either.
No,
so,
exactly that.
Yeah, it's a good indicator. Shocki Khan against Manoj Kumar.
So that was Shocki put in a good performance. I mean, Kumar's 3-0. Shocki dropped him. That's his second dropping. He dropped his in 2 fights now. He's dropped his opponents twice in both fights. He won every round. Boxed really well. Probably could argue that he could have done a bit more maybe to try and finish Kumar. But he probably took his foot off the gas when he dropped him. So if you were being critical, it might be that he could have had a bit more devil in him to try and finish him off. But you can't criticise the boxing skill level that he showed in that fight.
All right, moving on to the first of 2 title fights then. So Peter Mirga against Ben Lilly. Mirga looking to become a 2-weight Southern Area champion. Tell us how it went.
He did it comprehensively, 98-92. I had it a little slightly closer, but you know, 98-92 was a fair score from the ref. I mean, there was no doubt he won. Ben Lilly put up a great fight. He kept coming forward, but Peter Mirga seemed a lot better at bantamweight than super bantamweight. He seemed to be crisper, seemed to be sharper and stronger. And so, you know, now he's put himself in a position where he's back in the mix again after 2 consecutive losses to Ramezmamu for the Commonwealth Silver. Nico Leaves in an English eliminator. He's now, you know, that win against Ben Lilly has pushed himself forward. I think Ben Lilly will come again, to be fair. I think he's a decent fighter. I'm sure he'll win an area title. But it wasn't to be this time because Peter Mirga really has proven that he's a bit above area level. So, you know, Ben Lilly was up against somebody who's a bit better than area level, and he came up short, but I'm sure he'll get another crack and come back again. I mean, Peter, really, you've got to be aiming at the English title now, setting a path towards the English bantamweight title. And we'll sit down and have a chat over the next couple of weeks and see what we think is the best route forward.
Brilliant. And then the final one, the main event of the evening, Linus Udofia going to capture the English middleweight title for a second time. Linus told us he did. So
Linus's best ever performance, in my opinion. I mean, he totally dominated a ferocious puncher. Kevin Murray said he doesn't think he's ever had someone punch it so hard. But it was Linus that carried the power. I mean, he dropped Dan Catlin in round 4. I had him losing. I think the referees had him losing only 2 rounds out of the whole fight. I can only say there was one conclusive round I thought he lost, which was the 8th. But it was like in the 8th, he took a little bit of a breather, then came back heavily in the 9th. And then in the 10th, he came out and just went for Catlin and stopped him with a barrage of punches. But he hurt Dan Catlin in many of the rounds. It was, you know, the puncher against the boxer, but the boxer was carrying the crisper shots. And, you know, Dan Catlin may have been a puncher, but you can't punch what you can't hit cleanly. And Linus was moving in and out. And, you know, he brilliant, absolute masterclass of a performance. I mean, we're talking, that's British level. That's British level and above that performance. It was absolutely superb. And, you know, obviously Brad's got the English title. Brad's got the British title. Linus has got the English title. So Terry Stewart has got the British and the English champions as we sit here today. So congratulations.
And Ellis will be eyeing up that southern area.
And Ellis is hunting for the southern area. So they've got the middleweight. They've got the middleweight division sewn up there. But no, fantastic performance. But obviously, the navigation towards British title when the mandatory has already been served on Brad Paul's, it's not a 5-minute job. So we'll have to see where that leaves us. But without doubt, it was a very, very, very good performance. And the middleweight should all take notice. I can't imagine a queue of people wanting to fight him for the English belt.
And it's frustrating, isn't it? Because we've known for years that performance is inside of Linus, and then the Kieran Conway fight was so unfortunate for him with the stoppage, and then the illness around the McKenna fight. Sort of, there have been roadblocks that have stopped him achieving probably what he could and should achieve.
But to be fair, if he'd fought like that he didn't fight like that against Conway.
Yeah,
Fought like that against Conway, he'd have been beating Conway up by the halfway. You know, he'd have won that fight comfortably because he wouldn't have been in the position where he was being caught. So, you know, I honestly believe that performance beats Kieran Conway comfortably. He didn't do the same thing against Conway. It was a total, for whatever reason, it was a totally different fight on Saturday. But you know what sometimes happens? Your call. It's his home. He's used to it. It's home. This is why we try and get home advantage for our fighters. You know, and I know football teams, for whatever reason, apart from Tottenham, benefit from playing at home. They're used to the surroundings. No, but genuinely about the boxers. That's his home. It's his home of boxing. He's going to have a massive advantage at York. He's comfortable there. And therefore, he put on his greatest performance. And that helps when you're in familiar surroundings. I do believe that. And yeah, and I thought it was an absolutely brilliant performance. So, you know, full credit to him. And he deserves to have a pizza or two or whatever he wants to eat this week. But yeah, I mean, big fights could be on the horizon for him. But obviously, like we have seen in the last week with Josh Kelly at middleweight and Liam Smith pulling out, there's big fights at middleweight sitting around there. You've just got to keep within a reasonable fighting weight because the opportunities are astounding when they come up nowadays. So he needs to keep himself relatively fit, not too much above the weight, and keep yourself in shape. So if you get a call for one of these big fights, you're ready to go.
Yeah. And it is interesting, that thing about the home advantage, because sort of it's that turning up. You're going to be there a couple of hours beforehand. You know the people on the door. They're friendly. They say hello to you. You know the security guards. You know the people that will be letting you in and out of changing rooms. You know the layout of the change. You know what to go and do for a couple of hours before you fight the local area. All those things must play a part into the boxer's sort of mentality and ease of just being around a fight night without causing any additional stresses. But I think they're often overlooked as well.
No, I agree. So that's why you really, when you're going for purse bids, you want to get home advantage if you can.
Yeah. Speaking of the mandatory, called on Brad Paul's, Kieran Conway.
Kieran Conway's got that Asian competition, hasn't he?
Got that prize fight where he's fighting McKenna, isn't he?
And he's got a semi-final and a final to take care of.
Yeah.
So I'm just a bit confused as to what's going to happen with that. We will speak to Frank Warren's team and everything else, you know, the next couple of weeks to see what's going on. It's got to take place by February, but yeah, no idea what's going to happen there, because if he goes and wins the semi-final, he's then into the final for a lot of money. I can't see him wanting to do the British title ahead of fighting in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I have a sympathy with the board, really, because it's not the board's issue that he signed up for some tournament on the other side of the world that he sort of got an obligation to presumably fulfill. What are they meant to do? Sort of, if he's the next best British middleweight,
agree,
he should be getting the shot. But yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. Right, so yeah, that's all wrapped up. Congratulations to Linus. And yeah, getting that second run as an English champion at middleweight. And hopefully this phase of his career can shine. Question we had, so carrying on our talking points. John Bailey. Hello, John. And John won one of your tickets once, didn't he? I sat with him for the evening and sat and watched some fights. He's a lovely bloke. John asks, especially with this weekend down at Wembley coming up, is Turki Alalshikh good for boxing long term? And does it impact small hall boxing in any way?
Is he good for boxing long term? It's a difficult question because we don't know whether it's a plaything he's going to dispense of or whether he's really going to take boxing by the scruff and carry on doing what he's doing. What he's doing at the moment is generating a lot more money into boxers' pockets, which can't be a bad thing for boxing. You've got the moral issue of where the money comes from and the country it's coming from. But if we bin the political thing apart and just talk purely boxing, what it's going to do for small hall, in theory, is enable more of those fighters to potentially get on TV platforms. So it should be like a shuffling up, in effect, of certain things. A lot of the fights that would normally be on our TV will now be on the Riyadh cards. So it means there's an uplift of other fights that TV companies want to show. So I guess it's a plus. I guess there's not really a negative from my point of view. It doesn't impact small hall boxing in any inferior way. I just don't see where there's any negative. I don't know how big the positive is. I think time will tell. But whether he's good for boxing in the long term, God only knows. Because if he then drops boxing, then he loses interest in it. Then you end up with a lot of boxers who used to making a lot of money coming back to TV. Does the TV product get much worse? You'd probably argue that generally, can it get much worse? But, Sky are putting together a good card at the moment, to be honest, just off the subject. The card they're putting together with the Davis card is good. I've seen a couple of
Dan Aziz and Louis
Edmondson. I mean, they're putting together a good card there, to be honest. That's a good fight. So if they're going to put together fights like that, we're going to get in it. The fights will improve. The TV fights will improve. So hopefully that's what's going to happen. But yeah, the TV product does, as we spoke before, does need to improve. But I think if they bring more of these fights like the Edmondson Dan Aziz on, it will improve the TV network. You just need to get rid of blah blah versus Angel Hernandez for Mexico for WBA international title, female blah 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 versus Argentinian for world title. That they all need to stop because they're just garbage fights.
Can I offer up 3 different answers to this? I think it's great if all you want to do is see the biggest fights for the next, let's call it 3 years. Cool. Like, that's what we've asked for years, and that's what we're getting. So it's very hard to put a downside on that. I would say it's absolutely fucking dreadful for the longer term, in my view. He's been involved now for what, a year? Going back to October last year with the Fury and Gardner fight. I think that was maybe one of the first Riyadh season cards. There has not been one attempt at building a new star out of this Riyadh season stuff. It's burning through the entire sort of 30 plus roster of boxers around the world without replacing them. And the problem that's causing is that then you go down and you drop it onto what's a sort of domestic DAZN card. They're atrocious. That Sky one you're saying about, that's okay, but the rest of their schedule, domestic, pretty bad. TNT, okay. So TNT, maybe with Warren, they're building a bit of a stable domestically.
The only ones that are.
Yeah, they're the only ones that are. So where are the next generation of stars? Because this aren't going to last that long. Fury, Joshua, Usyk, they'll all be gone within 2 years. But you look at who's on that card, which we'll be previewing soon. There's only about 2 names under the age of 30 on there. They'll all be gone within the next 2 years, 3 years. I don't particularly envisage that Turkey has the appetite for sort of helping build stars up. He just wants stars chucked into big fights, which I can't blame him for, but I don't think it's going to create this overinflation. We've seen it before. Overinflation of sort of fighter purses causes problems then for the next layer down, which aren't being developed. And that doesn't, to me, it doesn't look great for what boxing will be in 3, 4, 5 years.
You've got to look at it. Apart from Warren, nobody's really developing. I mean, Matchroom, we've got a few they're developing. There's some local talent in the middleweight division they're developing. Sky definitely aren't really developing, are they, at all? They're just looking to put shows on and fights on. So yeah, it is difficult to see, but I don't know what they're trying to achieve over all these promoters. There must be a plan. They're not stupid people. So they must have an idea what they're trying to do, don't they? Mustn't they? Surely they must have.
I mean, my assumption is that they're all just looking for a buyout. Like Turkey, come and buy Matchroom Boxing, come and buy Queensbury Promotions, come and like to me, that seems the logical conclusion is that you no longer have all these different ones, and Turkey just sort of runs boxing. He seems to be heavily invested, whether that's emotionally, financially, whatever it is, in the British boxing scene, and sort of gives so many cards to the British boxers. Um, it just seems logical to me that you would just buy either the network in DAZN or whoever, like DAZN be the logical one because it's off of sort of terrestrial platforms, or you buy the promotions and you just buy the boxers. But either way, I don't see a great future in how it's being done. But I can totally get like there's a good side to it, which is we get to see all these fights we've wanted. But without the development, it's a bit worrying.
I don't think the development was happening before him. I don't think we can blame him for the development. Sky weren't developing a year ago.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Eddie Hearn has not been signing British fighters for years since he went into America. Very, very, very few. And Frank Warren is the only one that has been developing anything. So I don't think you can blame Turkey for that. I don't think you blame him for that. I think you blame the fact that their policy seems to be so different than it would be if I was there. And I know, I mean, listen, Sky's the #1 platform, so you watch that more closely. And it doesn't seem to be that they're interested in developing anything. They're interested in putting good shows on, and they've got their token women on there. But when I say token women, I'm just saying that it's some.
It feels like you need to put women on cards
rather than stage,
rather than developing.
Yeah, because you can get some good women's fights on there. You could, but it seems to be they're just getting the women on against pretty ropey fights rather than proper fights. If you know,
why did Lauren Parker not have one of hers put on there? It would make so much sense.
Why when Emma Dolan, who beat Shannon Ryan, why did they say she's British Commonwealth champion at the same weight as Lauren Parker? Why did Matchroom not exercise the option and put the fight on with Lauren Parker, who was European champion, dual unification? Why not?
Yeah.
That's a proper fight. Why did they not do that? They chose not to. So Emma Dolan didn't get a contract.
Yeah. And the third answer I was going to give as well is that it's great that it's over at Wembley this weekend. I was reading earlier, the ring walk time is meant to be 10 o'clock for Joshua. Brilliant that they brought it over Riyadh season in London. They're doing it around the world as well. But if you're going to continue to do, let's call it 50% in Saudi Arabia, it's very easy to get disenfranchised from the sport when it's not happening. And I know people say, well, you're watching it on TV. What does it matter? It does matter. You mentioned it the other week about the atmosphere in these places. It does matter. I know people go, well, you just watch the boxing. You don't need the atmosphere. It does add something to it, or more to the point, it takes something away when it's not there. So, yeah, I mean, the more that they can take these super cards to places that are logical outside of Saudi Arabia, still whack your Riyadh season posters all over it, do your advertising that way. I hope they do more of that if they're going to continue doing it. But yeah, I'd sort of, to me, it's not great when they're sort of predominantly out in Saudi Arabia because you're not going to go to them. It's the other thing. Sort of, if you can't invest in it like you're going to go to it, it's very difficult to sort of care. Anyway, by the by, on to this weekend. We've now got what are there, about 8 fights on there, something like that, 7. I'm going.
I know you are.
Yeah, I look forward to it. It's take my lad. But yeah, sort of it's a hell of a card still. I know there's been the dropout we mentioned, but let's look through it. So Mark Chamberlain. So they said about Turkey isn't developing anyone. He seems to have this odd sort of love for Mark Chamberlain, doesn't he? He ends up on all of his cards. Fighting against Josh Padley. I don't know anything about Josh Padley particularly.
Josh Padley's a decent fighter, that I would have expected to see at English level. We were looking at him because we were looking at him as a potential opponent for some of our fighters. So I've looked at him. Mark Chamberlain should win. Padley's not terrible. He's not, but he's not. He'll put up a bit of resistance, I think. So it's a good little fight. Chamberlain will win. But Padley will put up some sort of resistance, I think.
Nice. He kicks it off well, doesn't it? It's sort of that's an early afternoon fight. That's okay.
Yeah.
Just looking through these records, it's insane. This guy. And then so Joshua Buatsi, Willie Hutchinson. What do you reckon? Hutchinson coming off the back of his sort of biggest career win, isn't he, against
I think Buatsi beats him. I think Buatsi is just a bit too good, a bit too seasoned. Hutchinson is what he is. I think he's just a level or two below Buatsi. I think Buatsi wins. But Buatsi isn't the greatest spectacle, is he, to watch? He's not the most exciting to watch. Hopefully, Hutchinson may bring something out in him and make a good fight out of it. But I do expect Buatsi to win comfortably on points.
Yeah, I saw a bit of a head-to-head earlier with the two of them. Buatsi was making reference to the comments Hutchinson had made to Richards in their previous. Seems to be a bit of a fire within Buatsi, so hopefully that does bring something out that we don't normally see.
I thought that win against Richards, I thought Richards looked over the top and done.
Yeah, 100%. It was a strange one, wasn't it?
I think Buatsi will expose him. It's levels. It's levels. I thought the same with Linus one on Saturday. I said this is levels, and I think that's levels.
Yeah. Josh Kelly against now Ishmael Davis. Ishmael Davis stepping in last minute, middleweight. He was decent last time. I went against Troy Williamson. Ishmael Davis.
Add super welter though.
But I think Josh Kelly's a super well. I don't think he's a middleweight.
No, so maybe he came up for the fight against Liam Smith, didn't he? So I think it's a fair fight. I think Josh Kelly probably wins, but it's a good fight. And he was training that. He was training Ishmael for a fight in a couple of weeks' time, so he's obviously going to be, close to weight. Good opportunity for him. Again, I think for those people going, I think it's as good a fight as they could do. I mean, there were other better fights out there, I know for sure, but the fighters that were better fights than this were not available because they weren't on weight and weren't, able to make it. But for the ones that are ready and able to make it, that was a fight. I mean, Linus Udofia could have been in the mix as well, but you've got to look on paper. This guy's ranked number 3 as a super welterweight in the country. He hasn't won anything, but he's got an exemplary record. So that obviously makes more sense to them because it looks better on paper. So yeah, I think Josh Kelly probably wins, but again, I think it's not going to be a bad fight to watch.
All right. One that I can't decide if I'm excited about or if I'm going to use it as a toilet break. Anthony Kakache, Josh Warrington. It's a strange one, isn't it? Warrington coming off 2 losses. The IBF have said today they're not going to sanction it for the world title. It's a bit of a strange one.
I think it's a toilet break fight for me.
Yeah, Warrington going up to super feather for it.
Warrington's getting a payday, right? But I think it's one of those fights you look back on where a fighter who's got a big name is on the slide and probably loses and rides off into the sunset with one big pot of money. I think that's probably it. I think Kakache wins. I think Warrington is over the top. I think Josh Warrington's a nice man. I wouldn't mind. I'd like to see him win, but I think probably it's probably just a last hurrah of money.
Kakache's had a weird career, isn't he? Sort of just a bloke who's never had the opportunities. Never had the breaks that the sort of many other people have. I remember watching him on the Eubank Junior Arthur Abraham undercard years ago, sort of about 5 or 6 fights down the card as well, sort of toiled around. So it's nice to see him get the opportunities that he sort of deserves. 35 years old now.
Never ever give up. Never ever give up. It just shows you. Lee Wood, Kakache, you can come late in life and do it. So good luck to them. They're both going to be earning really good money. Good luck to them in earning their money. Good luck to them.
100%. One that you'll have a close eye on, I'm sure. Tyler Denny, Hamzah Sheeraz.
Yeah, this is a really interesting fight. Look, everybody thinks Hamzah Sheeraz is just going to blow him out. I know that there's several people that are fair judges that I know say, no, you've got this wrong. Denny will rough him up and get inside him and refer to the Bradley Skeet fight. I think it's a really interesting fight. Look, it could go that Sheeraz is too big, too strong and blows him away. It could be. On the other end, it could be that Denny just does what he does, gets in there, roughs you up, head, elbow, everything else, and just grinds him and grinds Sheeraz down. Obviously, Sheeraz worthy favourite, most likely winner, but it's an interesting fight to watch.
Yeah, I look forward to that one. I think Sheeraz wins a points decision that will be close enough that it was competitive, but I think he's sort of a class above to some degree. And that's no offence to Tyler at all, who sort of he's had a brilliant sort of phase of this career, and it's great that he's got the opportunity to go and do this at Wembley Stadium.
100%.
And then on to the big one, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois.
Well, I've been told from somebody who knows somebody that Dubois is fighting with a busted right hand.
Oh.
Not from Don Charles, and I could be wrong, but I've been told from two people the same thing, that he's got a problem with his right hand. And whether it's true or not, again, I don't want somebody shouting me down, but the bottom line is I've been told that, and I've been told he's got to get rid of Joshua early.
Wow.
Which means if he's going to come out aggressively against Joshua, I think he probably gets nailed early.
I don't know. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Sort of chuck it all in the first 3 rounds and hope, but
maybe. But again, I've seen fight. You can't say it's totally true, but both sources are fairly, when they've told me things in the past, they've generally been pretty accurate.
Yeah. All right. So does that change what you think the outcome of the fight?
No, because I always thought Joshua would win anyway. So no, it doesn't. It just means to me, I now have Joshua winning inside 6.
Yeah, I favoured Dubois. I don't really know why. There's no great science behind it. This sort of renaissance of Anthony Joshua is completely false. Sort of, we discussed it the other week, but beating the likes of Otto Wallin, Robert Helenius, Francis Ngannou is not the run that takes you on to being world champion again. And I'm using world champion very loosely because we know it's sort of an engineered world championship.
Yeah.
I just think Dubois sort of, I don't know, coming through that Hrgovic fight, the sort of grit and determination and resilience of doing that, and Jarrell Miller, which it's not quite as tough an ask.
I did say the same thing. I think having Don Charles in his corner is a massive advantage. A massive advantage. He knows Anthony Joshua inside and out. If the stories are not totally accurate, then I do give Dubois a bigger chance. I'm assuming what I've been told is right. That's why I'm going for the inside 6 rounds. If what I'm told is not correct, then I think Dubois, if he keeps out of harm's way, could cause Joshua a lot of trouble down the stretch.
I think it's safe to say, and my predictions are famously quite wrong on here, but I don't see it going the distance. I think someone gets flattened. Who that will be, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to favour Dubois. I fancy Dubois for it.
It's a good fight. Listen, we'll be watching it. It's an exciting fight, so look forward to seeing it.
And it'd be an incredible sort of passing of the torch for Dubois as well, wouldn't it? Because, not to say Joshua's finished or done or anything like that, but what an opportunity for him to become the next sort of younger face of British heavyweight boxing, and sort of allow Fury and Joshua to go off and do their own things. And the problem is, ultimately, it's not for a world championship, is it? Because Usyk's still alive. So, it all feels a little bit false, but it's a brilliant fight. I love it.
Exactly that. So, no, I hope you enjoy Saturday. I'm sure you will.
Yeah, it'll be grand. Excellent. We'll come back next week, discuss it a bit more.
It might be the week after because
you're away, aren't you?
I'm away, so we'll skip a week. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Blinding. Have a lovely time away.
Thank you very much, and we'll.
Thank you very much, all. And
I'll catch up with you, and when we're back, that'll be the next time we do this. Will be about 10 days from Boxmania, so we'll cover that in great detail.
Excellent. All right, fantastic. Cheers, Steve. Thank you all for watching.
Okay, Martin.
We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Yeah.